So a few years ago, I tried to start a clothing line. I had the concept, I had the vision, I had the sketches, I had samples, I contacted vendors. And then when I tried to figure out how to actually make it, I hit a wall. I hit a wall. The sampling process alone was enough to make me walk away. There were too many moving parts and too many decisions I didn't know how to make. And there were too many things that I didn't know existed that I apparently needed. But what I didn't know at the time, and what I find pretty ironic now, is that half the tools in this cluster were built specifically because that process is brutal for everyone. Not just people trying to start something from scratch, but designers at major brands, sourcing teams, production managers have been doing this for 20 years. The technology in zones 1 through 3 exists because making fashion is hard. It's always been hard, and the industry is finally starting to build tools to make it less hard. So if you've ever tried to make something or start your own line and you hit a wall, or if you work in tech and you've always wondered where the chaos in your data comes from, this is the video, because it starts here in this cluster every single time. I'm Rena. I've spent nearly 20 years inside global fashion brands and retailers. I started in buying and eventually made my way into back-end systems. I created the fashion tech spectrum to map the whole journey. The creative cluster is the part of the spectrum I know from the outside in. I didn't design, I didn't make patterns, but I inherited the consequences of every decision made in these 3 zones. And that vantage point is exactly what we're bringing to this video. Knowing what downstream systems look like when the cluster gets it right, and knowing what it looks like when it doesn't is its own kind of credential. In the previous video, I introduced the fashion tech spectrum, 3 clusters, 9 zones, and 1 framework for understanding everything that happens between a fashion idea and a digital product. If you haven't seen that video, go back and watch that first, because this is just the first deep dive of the 3-part series. The creative cluster is zones 1, 2, and 3. Creative direction, design and product data setup, and production and sourcing. The skills here are creative, craft-based, deeply intuitive, and every single decision made in this cluster becomes data that the downstream systems either work with or fight against. We're going to follow one product through the entire series, a denim line. We're following it all the way from the mood board. It starts in zone 1, through production, through the digital launch, through the storefront, all the way to an AI fit guide a customer uses to find their size in zone 6. That fit guide is the payoff, but it only works if every zone before it did its job. Zone 1, creative direction. Every line starts here, not with a brief, not with a budget meeting, but with a feeling. And that's not a soft thing, that's the discipline. The creative process at this stage is supposed to be expansive before it gets constrained. The job in zone 1 is to answer one question. What is the brand saying this season? Trend researchers are pulling cultural references. What's happening in music, art, street style, architecture, anywhere the culture is moving. Creative directors are setting the seasonal vision. Color and material designers are building the palette. The work is qualitative and directional, and it has to happen 12 to 18 months before the product hits the site, which means that by the time your white leg denim is on the site, the creative team is already working on something else entirely. That 12 to 18 month window is one of the most important tensions in this cluster, and it's almost never talked about plainly. You're betting on a trend that doesn't exist yet at the scale you need it to, and AI is trying to help with that. Let's jump into trend forecasting. Trend forecasting is where companies like WGSN and Trendalytics come in. They are trend forecasting platforms, data-driven services that help the creative teams see where the culture is heading and build a case for their direction. They're not replacing the creative instinct, they're giving it evidence. I repeat, they are not replacing the creative instinct. Just trying to make that clear. WGSN has been around since 1998 and is the dominant platform in the industry. Most major brands and retailers use it. It combines fashion and cultural research with data signals from social media, search, and retail performance. The newer generation of forecasting, represented by platforms like Trendalytics, is more data forward. It pulls real time signals from search volume, social engagement, and customer behavior to identify microtrends before they peak. And then there's Tech, which is worth knowing even if it's a little lesser well known. Tech uses AI to analyze millions of social media images, not text, but images. And it uses AI to detect trend signals in color, silhouette, and print. It's used by brands in the LVMH and Kering portfolios. It's an example of image recognition AI being applied to creative direction in a way that is genuinely useful, and it's not just theoretically interesting. So, for my tech people, if you've ever wondered how a fashion brand knows to bet on a wide leg denim 18 months before it's everywhere, this is how. It's not a creative director having a vision in a vacuum. It's a creative director working with data that tells them the market is moving in a direction. Then they're using their judgment to interpret that signal for the brand and making a call. That combination of data and instinct is what Zone 1 actually looks like. Let's get into AI in this zone. Generative AI tools like Midjourney, Adobe Firefly, and Stable Diffusion are being used by creative teams to generate reference imagery, explore colorways, and build mood boards faster than traditional methods. The honest conversation happening inside brands right now is AI generated reference a useful starting point or a shortcut that flattens the creative vision? Both sides have a point. I mean, the tools are real, the debate is real. But in my personal opinion, AI is accelerating the ideation phase. It's not replacing the creative director. But that's my opinion. Color science, or the science of color in Zone 1, where feeling becomes a number. Here's something most people outside of Zone 1 don't think about. Color has to be communicated precisely across a global supply chain. A creative director approves a sun-faded wash on a mood board in New York. That color has to be reproduced accurately at a factory in Vietnam on a separate fabric with a specific dye process. The gap between what was approved and what comes back from production is a real and expensive problem, and it's solved by color science tools. Pantone is the industry standard for color communication. Most people know Pantone as a brand, but the Pantone Connect platform, which is their digital ecosystem, is what actually makes global color communication work. It lets teams share, manage, and match colors digitally across every touch point in the supply chain. Alongside Pantone, brands use spectrophometers,
I know I'm saying that wrong, but hopefully you guys get the picture.
which are physical devices that measure color scientifically to verify that a fabric or dye matches the approved spec. This is the bridge between creative approval and the production reality. So let's talk about our denim line. It's a mood board, vintage washes, wide leg silhouettes, a sun faded color story. That feeling is now the brief. And somewhere in the data, it has a Pantone code. Before we jump into Zone 2, let's talk about some potential career opportunities that exist in Zone 1. First, we have an AI trend analyst. This is an emerging role at brands and forecasting platforms. It combines fashion editorial instinct with data literacy. Neither a pure analyst nor a pure trend researcher. Exactly a gap that a fashion educated person with data curiosity can fill. Next up, a creative technology specialist. They manage the AI and digital tools used by the creative team. They evaluate new generative AI tool, train the team, and they ensure that the creative process isn't compromised by the shortcut. This requires fashion context and a comfort with technology and tech in general. Roles at WGSN, Tech, Trendalytics. These are fashion tech companies. They hire people with fashion backgrounds to build content, validate data models, and consult with brand clients. Zone 2, design, development, and product data setup. This is where the feeling becomes something buildable, and it's one of the most technically layered zones on the creative side of the spectrum, which I think surprises most people who assume design is just a bunch of sketches. Your fashion designer is drawing technical flats, precise dimensions drawings of exactly how the garment is constructed. Your pattern maker is building the base block, the foundational pattern the entire fit is cut from. Your wash developer is running lab dips to get the color exactly right. Hardware is being selected. Every physical decision about what this denim line will actually look like is made here. 3D design. Clo 3D and Browseware are two of the dominant 3D garment design and simulation platforms in the industry. Clo is more widely adopted across brands of all sizes. Browseware skews more enterprise and has strong integrations with PLM systems, but they do the same thing. They let designers visualize how a garment drapes and moves on a digital body before a single yard of fabric is cut. For our denim line, that means a designer can see the wide leg silhouette in the sun faded wash on a digital fit model, adjust the rise, change the hem, and modify the drape all before a physical sample exists. The time and cost implications of this are significant. A traditional sampling process for a denim line might run 5 or 6 rounds. With 3D design tools used well, brands are getting that down to just 1 or 2. The sample that gets produced is already close to right because the digital version went through multiple rounds of refinement first. Adobe Substance 3D is worth knowing alongside these platforms. It's a material and texture design tool that lets teams create photorealistic digital fabric swatches, simulating texture, sheen, and pattern without physical swatches. It's used alongside Clo 3D for a fully digital product development. The broader movement this is all pointing towards is called digital product creation, or DCP. The goal is to design, fit, and approve a product entirely in 3D before committing to a single physical sample. Most large brands are somewhere on the journey towards this, but very few are actually achieving it. This is the direction the industry is moving, and the roles being created around it are real and growing. One more thing about Clo 3D specifically, there is a great creator community around this software, and it's genuinely a career path. There's YouTube tutorials, asset libraries, online courses. If you have a fashion background and want to build a skill, this is definitely in demand. Clo 3D is one of the clearest career paths to 3D design. AI in zone 2. So pattern making is emerging in this zone. Tools are beginning to assist with base block generation and grading rule applications. It's still early, and most pattern making is still done by experienced pattern makers using tools like Gerber, AccuMark, or Opitex. AI assistance in grading is becoming more viable. It's worth watching as a developing capability rather than a current standard. Let's get into the PLM in zone 2. This is the part of the zone where most people outside the industry have never heard of, and it's the part that matters for every zone downstream. The PLM is a product lifestyle management platform. It manages the complete life cycle of a product from concept through development. We're talking bill of materials, which is every component that goes into the product, supplier information, compliance and testing documentation, sustainability data, cost sheets, and approval workflows. The data architecture of a PLM is very complex, and it's the system that translates the creative decisions made in zone 1 and 2 into structured data that every other system on the spectrum can read. The main platforms are Centric PLM, Backbone, and Flex PLM. Centric is the dominant platform, and it's used at brands including Levi's, Crocs, and many others. It's been expanding its AI capabilities for things like automated attribute populating and predictive costing. Backbone is more modern and design forward with DTC emerging brands. Flex PLM is the legacy platform. It's still used at many large brands, but is increasingly being replaced. So our denim line, NRF color codes get assigned, size codes get mapped, fabric content, hardware finish, wash name, Every attribute that defines this product gets entered into the system. Getting this right matters more than most people realize, because if it leaves this zone wrong, it travels wrong through every system it touches. The PIM in zone 5, the e-commerce platform in zone 6, the AI fit guide, all of it. The messy product data showing up in zone 7 or 8, it has its origin story right here. The PLM to PIM or PIM handoff, the gap that nobody talks about, is one of the most important and underexplained transitions in the entire spectrum. Data leaves the PLM at the end of zone 2 and needs to get into the PIM, which is the product information management system, in zone 5. This is not automatic. It's not clean. It requires data mapping, data transformation, and it's usually a very manual quality check setup. I'm currently working on it, PIM implementation, and whew, it's a lot of work. When this handoff goes wrong, missing attributes, inconsistent naming conventions, values that didn't map correctly, the arrows travel through every downstream system. This is the single most common origin point for the messy product data that tech people inherit. Not because anyone was careless, but because the systems weren't designed to talk to each other perfectly, and most likely someone was making decisions under deadline pressures. Understanding this handoff exists and where it breaks is one of the most valuable things a tech person working in fashion can know. Sustainability technology is becoming a compliance requirement. Zone 2 is where sustainability data starts to get tracked and is worth understanding why it's becoming a systems problem rather than a value statement. The EU's digital product passport regulation, coming into force between 2026 and 2030, will require brands to provide full material traceability data for products sold in Europe. Every fiber, every process, every supplier in the supply chain. This data has to come from somewhere, and it has to start being collected right here in zone 2. Platforms like SourceMap and Textile Genesis are building the infrastructure for this. Textile Genesis uses blockchain to track materials from origin through every stage of processing and production. It's used by brands in the H&M group and Kering portfolios. These are not niche sustainability tools. They are becoming compliance infrastructure. Alongside traceability, chemical compliance systems track which chemicals and processes are used in fabric production, and they ensure compliance with restricted substance lists. This is already required in most markets, but the difference now is that brands need the data digitally, not just in a random PDF on someone's desktop. The people building and managing sustainability data systems need to understand fashion materials and production well enough to know what they're tracking. It's the thing a fashion background gives you that a data analyst hired from outside the industry might not have. Our denim line, let's get back into it. The sun faded wash gets a lab dip. The wide legs get a base block visualized in Clo 3D. And somewhere in a PLM, an NRF color code gets assigned to a feeling, along with a bill of materials, a compliance document, and a cost sheet. Let's jump into some career opportunities that exist in zone 2. Clo 3D has a growing community around it, and 3D design in general is in high demand. It's a relatively new role, but if you have a fashion design background and you learn Clo 3D proficiently, this is a genuine opportunity for you. We also have a PLM administrator or a PLM analyst. I believe this area is critically understaffed at most fashion brands. It sits at the exact intersection of the creative process and data structure. It's honestly one of the most valuable roles on the spectrum, and it's almost never on a fashion graduate's radar. Sustainability data analyst. They're compliance driven and it's growing fast. Brands need people who understand fashion materials and production well enough to collect, validate, and manage sustainability data. The EU digital product passport requirement is definitely creating a real demand for this role right now. All right, y'all. So let's get into the last zone in the creative structure, zone 3, production and sourcing. This is the iterative loop that most people outside the fashion industry never see. And it's actually quite humbling, and it has been for many years. Tech packs go to the vendor. So the tech pack has the construction details, measurements, materials, hardware, the stitching specifications, finishing instructions, every single detail a factory needs to build the product. So the tech packs go out. Then the samples come back. Then the samples go back with comments, and then more samples come in. Then you have the fit sessions, the washes get adjusted, costs get negotiated. The loop is just multiple rounds before anything is ever approved. If you come from a tech background, the production will feel a little different than what you're used to, because we're used to sprints and release dates and a backlog you can see. This is just as rigorous. It's just governed by a physical product instead of a ticketing system. The samples have to be made, shipped, reviewed, and revised. That takes time, and no project management tool can compress that. Learning to work within that rhythm instead of against it is one of the most important adjustments when you enter this industry. Let's jump into tech pack software. Traditionally, tech packs were PDF documents built in Adobe Illustrator. And honestly, a lot of organizations still do it that way. But the shift towards structured digital tech packs, where specifications are data fields rather than formatted text, is one of the more significant changes happening inside Zone 3 right now. Platforms like TechPacker are building cloud-based systems where TechPack detail lives as structured information rather than a document. It allows for real-time collaboration between teams and vendors. It also allows for revision history, and it integrates well with PLM systems. The TechPack as a data object rather than a PDF means data can flow into the PLM, into the costing systems, into the vendor portal without someone having to retype it. And I always say the more manual something is, the more room there is for error. So that's the real operational improvement, and it's happening in brands right now. AI in production. AI virtual grading is one of the clearest examples of technology compressing the production timeline. Once the base pattern is approved, it has to be graded and then scaled up and down across the full size range. Traditionally, that means producing physical grade samples to confirm the grade works. AI tools built into Clo 3D and Browseware can now test how a grade performs across sizes on digital bodies before committing to physical samples. Brands using this are cutting real time out of the grading process. AI quality prediction is one of the most nuanced of the tools of AI in Zone 3. Machine learning models trained on historical defect data that can flag quality risks for given product specs before production begins is a great opportunity in this zone. It's still early, but the brands with enough historical production data to train the models in a meaningful way are definitely starting to explore this. So my honest read on AI in Zone 3, the virtual grading is real and it's working. Cost estimation is emerging and it's very useful. And quality prediction is early and still proving itself. The common thread in all of this is that AI in production works best where the data is clean, structured, and has historical data to train on. This is one of the more reasons why the data quality decisions made in Zone 2 matter so much. Supply chain visibility, again, has gone from a nice to have to a compliance requirement. Supply chain visibility has moved fast, very fast in the last few years. It used to be just like a marketing talking point, but now it's a legal requirement in several markets. The EU's Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive and the US Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act are requiring brands to demonstrate where their products are made and under what conditions. That means having a system in place to track the supply chain, not just documentation that says you asked. The technology infrastructure for this is being built right now, and the people who understand both the fashion supply chain and the data systems managing it are in high demand. SourceMap builds supply chain maps that show the full picture of where a product comes from. Avery Dennison's Jinla platform uses QR codes and NFC tags on physical products to connect them to a digital record of their supply chain. And it's being positioned as a foundation for the EU Digital Product Passport. These are not niche platforms anymore. They are becoming the standard infrastructure for any brand selling in regulated markets. Let's talk about the supplier collaboration, which is a gap that still exists and could use some improvement. So it's worth naming the sample feedback loop of sending comments, approval revisions, managing multiple rounds of samples is still largely managed by email and PDF at a significant number of organizations. Platforms like Pivot 88 and Inspectro are providing digital collaboration infrastructure for this. Inspectro uses AI to predict quality risks based on historical data. The adoption curve is slower than you'd expect given how much friction the current process creates. For my tech people working in or adjacent to Zone 3, this is one of the clearest examples of an industry that has the technology available but hasn't fully moved into it. The gap where a lot of operational improvement is waiting. One last thing worth noting or understanding about this zone is that the wholesale retailers, which are your department stores or your specialty accounts buying into the line, they're also placing orders here alongside with the brand's own direct orders. Their volume often feeds directly into the production run. This means that the wholesale account changing their order quantity in Zone 3 ripples all the way to the inventory allocation and fulfillments in Zones 7 and 8. A buyer at a department store adjusting their denim order while production is being finalized isn't just a sales conversation. It's a data event that travels through every downstream system. The decision made here travels a really long way. Our denim line in Zone 3. We've gone through 3 rounds of samples, 2 fit sessions, and 1 wash that just isn't working, and a wholesale retailer whose order just changed the whole production volume. Then we have the tech pack that's been revised 4 times. The AI grading check, it's passed. The timeline is holding. Barely, but it's holding. Let's jump into some career opportunities that exist in Zone 3. First, we have a supply chain visibility analyst. It's new enough that most people don't really know it exists yet. It requires understanding the fashion supply chain plus data management skills. Compliance pressure is creating a real demand for this role currently. A tech pack specialist, the evolution of the technical designer role into a more data-focused function. As tech packs become structured data objects, the skill of building and managing data packs becomes more connected to the PLM and downstream systems. Definitely becomes more of a data role. Vendor operations manager. They own the digital collaboration infrastructure between a brand and its vendor base. It requires the fashion production knowledge and the systems thinking. It sits at the intersections of Zone 3 and 8. And last, we have the sustainability operations manager. They own the data collection and reporting infrastructure for the sustainability compliance. It's one of the fastest growing roles in fashion operation right now, and it's driven entirely by the regulatory pressure. Okay, y'all. So the creative cluster is done, and our denim line is real, approved, and it's ready to move on. So the business cluster takes it from here, but that's the next video. So I hope you enjoyed the creative cluster. All of that to say, I attempted to start a clothing line and I failed, and that's okay. I walked away from it because the process was just too much for me. I had a fashion degree, I knew the industry, I just didn't know the tools that were available to me. Now, granted, I did name a lot of tools that are used corporately, but there are definitely tools that are available to individuals and smaller brands as well. So the gap between what exists and what people actually know exists is the whole reason that I'm here. And I want to say something to my tech friends. The messy product data that you're inheriting right now, it has a story. It was entered into the PLM by someone who was under crazy deadlines, and their team's chat was probably pinging crazy, right? And it's not malicious, it's not careless, it's just the nature of the business. Things happen fast and they're crazy. So anyway, understanding that context does not fix the data, but it completely changes how you approach fixing it. Because instead of treating it as a data problem, it's more of a technical solution. You start treating it as a process problem that can be improved. That's all I got for this video, guys. I hope you stick around. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next video that's coming up. We're moving into the business clusters, which are zones 4, 5, and 6. We're going to go over merchandising and planning, the digital launch, and the storefront. Our denim line goes from approved product to live on the site. And it's where the commercial decisions that shape everything downstream get made. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. Bye.